you'll be pulling off probably the biggest railway heritage event of the 21st century.
This is now what we call deep shit.
That was the 25th of the 6th, 1954. I'm the only one of the crew left.
A lot of people think, what a pack of silly old farts running around playing trains, but there are some serious connections.
You're all standing here, chat, just talking the bloody train.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous. It doesn't take much for something to go wrong.
We've had a landslide.
In just a few days, the small historic town of Walhalla, currently populated by just 12 residents, will be abuzz with excited railway enthusiasts. It might be hard to tell, but this small tourist town is preparing for what is arguably the biggest event in its recent history. Michael Leaney is the owner of Walhalla's famous Star Hotel and president of the Walhalla Goldfields Railway. Michael has been working closely with another tourist railway, Puffing Billy, organising this unique occasion, which will see the return of the legendary steam locomotive 7A to its original line. It is business as usual at the Puffing Billy Railway, or so it seems. Behind the scenes, they too are preparing for what promises to be one of their most challenging weekends to date.
I'm overwhelmed by the level of emotion there is in relation to this. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not really a trained person, but there's just a really amazing level of interest and amazing level of emotion that people have. And I suppose it comes back to this engine is the original engine that saw the last train out of Erica in 1954, and there are people who were there and remember that, and they never thought that they'd ever see a railway operate back into Walhalla again, and that's going, but they also never thought that they'd see one of the original locomotives come back into Walhalla, and the original locomotive.
The first major operation of the weekend takes place in Menzies Creek. From here, the train will travel 180 kilometres atop a low loader before finally reaching Walhalla. Getting the train onto the truck would not be easy, however.
Well, here we are at Menzies Creek. This is where we're loading the NA class onto the low loader. But basically what will happen is all the track behind me will be bolted together and will be put onto the truck, and slowly we'll winch the engine onto the low loader and it'll head off to Walhalla. It's actually never been done before. This is the first time this method's been used. Normally we use a crane to lift these engines around. So it's going to be interesting in the next little while to make sure it all works, and hopefully it will happen. But Puffing Billy's done a lot of work here and a lot of calculations, and look, we'll see in the next few moments, I suppose, as soon as the truck arrives and we can connect it all together.
The truck's backing up in the centre of the track so that we can lay this piece of panel on, and then the loco, basically the ramp will get joined, the loco will get pulled up onto it, so it's sitting in the centre of the truck, and then they can dog it off for the trip down.
Some of the other things in the background is like the insurance of this locomotive. I mean, people just think it arrives, that's it, but this locomotive is actually insured, and it's costing about $10,000 to insure it for 5 days. It ain't cheap to do, and so there's a considerable expense that has to be covered. Unfortunately, we did try to get an insurance company to donate the insurance, but that wasn't going to happen.
A key figure in the organisation of the weekend is one of Puffing Billy's most popular members of staff, John Hoy.
Well, I'm the operations and engineering manager here, and I've been a volunteer for about 40 years and a paid member of staff for about the last 5. So I'm responsible for all of the train operations. This is quite interesting because we started a conversation with Walhalla about 3 years ago about the possibility of an NA coming down, one of our NA class locomotives coming down to Walhalla for the 100-year celebrations. And at that stage of the game, 2010 was a long way away, so it was, yeah, okay, we'll think about it. Well, we've got from thinking about it to it actually happening.
One of the jobs I've got in the morning is to measure the exact track height and to phone that through to them so they know exactly what they're working for, and the guys only have 4 hours to get it right.
As preparations continue, Michael has made a discovery that could threaten to derail the whole operation.
But then there's approximately, I'd say there's about 5 metres. Do you want me to measure it exactly for you? I just rang through to Walhalla because my concern was that at Walhalla we don't have the equipment that they've got here necessarily, and there's this one section of track we didn't really know about. So just was warning them that there's about a 5 metre section of track that needs to be linked into the two of it. But they're pretty confident that they've got enough people around to move it. That section would probably weigh near on a tonne. And but they've got lots of people, so 20 people can lift a tonne. That's basically the theory that they're using.
After months of planning and preparation, the locomotive takes its first step toward Walhalla, but not without difficulty.
The axle boxes have travelled down to their lowest point and they've now dragged the brakes on, so because the brake rigging's all fixed, when the suspension's sitting at a normal height it's no drama, but because what's happened, the axle boxes have all dropped down because of the angle of things being pulled at. Once it starts to climb up here, the brakes will come off again. It's all right, it's not going to go anywhere. The difficulty was in dealing with people outside the rail fraternity, particularly the insurances and Public Transport Safety Victoria. This was a whole new ball game to them, and particularly the insurance side of it, they really struggled. So there were a couple of times where we took deep breaths and thought, this isn't going to happen.
At last, with enormous effort, the locomotive is lifted up so that it can glide smoothly onto the low loader.
I'm pretty proud of these blokes. They're a good bunch of smart boys. Most of the guys you see here are volunteers out of the workshop that would normally work in our workshop. And with a little bit of direction from a couple of paid staff members, then here we go. That's what makes this railway unique. We can do anything. I proudly say we can do anything. Well, I was born on the 1st of June 1950 at Coburg. I grew up at Glenroy, and I lived just on the hill at Glenroy, which the railway people know as Glenroy Bank. And as a young guy, I was pretty fascinated with the steam engine that used to go up and down. So by the time I'd mastered the back fence, I could climb up one side, fall down the other, walk through a couple of paddocks, and there I'd be watching trains go up and down. And of course, my mother would discover that I was missing in action, and there'd be much panic. But after a while, I managed to educate her as to where I'd be, and that's been the love of trains ever since.
This is where the butterflies start singing. Is it right? Okay. Because we've got to repeat this at our end, and we didn't have as much gear as this. But anyway, we'll be right. It'll be fine. But I am getting butterflies at the moment. Oh. There's going to be some moments. I have no doubt there's going to be some moments, and there's going to be a few dummy spits in the next few days. But there was people in the lead up to it were saying to me, if you pull this off, you don't realise that you'll be pulling off probably the biggest railway heritage event of the 21st century.
Transporting the train to Walhalla Yard was the easy part. The pressure mounts for the Walhalla volunteers, who must race the clock to ensure that they set the train safely onto the track by nightfall. Unexpected delays at Menzies Creek and on the highway mean the volunteers begin the procedure 2 hours behind schedule. With the light fading and rain beginning to fall, the tension mounts, especially for Michael.
At the moment, because it's got such low suspension on this low loader, it's actually on the rails, and the truck just doesn't have it because of the gravel. It doesn't have enough power to push it back, so they're just connecting up the tractor to give it a bit of a tow to help it get out. It's just sliding. It's just the suspension's now slid on the rails, so we've just got to push it back a bit.
I just said when you said no worries, we'll get it off if it all goes to plan. This is now what we call deep shit. We ground the chassis of the trailer out on the track there to start with. I don't think we've got 6 tonne of coal there. So watch this space, as they say in the classics, eh?
Under the guidance of the Puffing Billy team, success or failure depends solely on the Walhalla Goldfields railway crew. Having never unloaded a locomotive in this fashion, they face an incredibly steep learning curve.
And you've turned on another one of your prized Walhalla days. Does the snow come later?
Time is slipping away for these desperate enthusiasts. Nightfall threatens to complicate their task, making it extremely dangerous.
The train is simply the means of bringing the people together. And, you know, when they've got a wonderful common, you know, everybody wanted to do one thing, get an NA down there, get it and run it. And that's all there was to it. It was just wonderful, just remarkable.
After years of planning, preparation and sheer hard work, the 7A returns home to the Bowie Walhalla line.
Well, the loco's there. It's on the rail, so it's now on Walhalla rails, which is the first time in 66 years since it's been in Walhalla. So that's probably the most risky bit of the whole trip, is getting it on and off the trailers and transporting it down here. So from here on, it's plain sailing. So I think they're about to start putting some water into the engine. They're going to fill her up with some water, and they're even going to start putting a little bit of fire into it tonight to start getting it going, so we're ready to rock tomorrow morning. So it's all good. I'm very, very happy. I'm less stressed now, and it's good to have it back in Walhalla, and there's a lot of people who are overjoyed that it's here.
Day two, here we go again. We've spent this morning preparing the locomotive. We had to take a lot of the stuff off it to bring it down here. So this morning we're here bright and early, about 7 we kicked off. And we've put on the whistle and some other valves. We've had to fill the boiler with water, which has been a slow process. We've had to fill the side tanks. Then we've had to put a fire in it, and we're just waiting for the kettle to boil.
My interest in the narrow gauge railway started in about 1949, 1950. I was a small boy. We used to come to Moe for holidays, and I ended up climbing into my first narrow gauge locomotive in the Moe railway yards. And I've had an association with the line here since that time, I suppose. During that time, of course, I had a career with Puffing Billy for 20 years as their engineering manager and operations manager, and I've been driving the Puffing Billy engines now for about 25 years, and of course firing them a long time before that. We originally ran the last powered vehicle across the Thompson River Bridge before they pulled it up in 1958, and today we're going to run 7A across it, so yeah, quite an event.
Well, I think we're about to see the engine move for the first time, and under its own steam, as it were. So this is a big moment, and yeah, it's not only going to move a few feet, but it's a big step for something that's been, we've been waiting for a long time. And I know there's a lot of people that never thought they'd see this happen, and here we are. So it's just amazing. It's really going to be a great moment. Okay, ready to go? Here we go. All right, you ready to go? Yep. Come. Yeehaw! There you go, first run. Never driven a steam train before, but had my first go. Very exciting. Well, John's about to run down the line and check that it's all okay, and we're going to go down and see the tight bend that we've had to move to make sure that it all works there and it's going to work. And I just can't thank John enough for letting me drive, which is just great. So this has been a real experience in the last few months.
This is just one of these great things where you look at yourself and you say, shit, could we make this happen?
I've been out with lunch with Amon, the CEO of Puffing Billy, and we said, come on, let's go down and let's have a chat to John. We walked into the office and I was introduced, and he's such a character. I mean, I think he's such a fabulous guy, and I've laughed so much.
Oh, the word extrovert springs to mind, I think. Loyalty is another word that you could use. An all-round good man, probably well suited to the job he's got.
He wanted it to happen too, and I know that the main thing was with the whole event, we're on the same wavelength about making it happen, and we weren't going to let people telling us it couldn't happen get in our way. The bend up on the railway line is a very sharp bend. It's a two-chain bend, but you've got to remember that this railway closed in 1944. All the track was pulled up in the 1960s, and this line is brand new then. It was only laid in the last 15 years, and when we relayed it for our diesel locomotives, not necessarily for an NA class locomotive that has different requirements.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous. It doesn't take much for something to go wrong.
We always knew that this bend was very tight. It was always considered to be the sharpest of any railway in Victoria. When we did measurements on it about 5-6 weeks ago, we found that it was a bit tight for the loco, and we had to move the whole track out from the edge by about 10 centimetres to ease the curve. And that required us adding about a 15 centimetre block into the track just to expand it slightly. We stretched it, and we've put special blocks in to stop the track potentially moving back closer to the rock wall, just so that it works, and it worked fine. It only had an offset of about 7 mils as it went around the corner.
Day 2 has raised Michael's spirits considerably. Having overcome the major hurdle of navigating the tight bend, his focus now shifts to the rest of the weekend. What happens over the next few days will be out of his control, though.
I'm just now beginning to worry about the crowds that are going to be here on Saturday and Sunday. That's really what's beginning to worry me. It's not what we've done with the locomotive. The track's fine, the locomotive's fine, all of our people are fine. It's just, I think we're going to have people crawling all over this place, and it's going to be something to see.
After a few hours' sleep, the time comes for the 7A to begin its first official test runs. Whilst the carriages may be empty today, tomorrow they'll be brimming with excited and enthusiastic passengers. However, it seems today that the 7A isn't the only attraction bringing people to the Walhalla Railway.
It's Friday the 28th of May, it's my wedding. Just standing here waiting for Brooke to turn up, and my son as well, little 2.5-year-old Campbell. Getting a little bit nervous, a little bit excited, but can't wait. Kind of fell into the train just because we knew people that knew people, so took the opportunity to make the most of the NA class while it was up here. So that's sort of added a little element of excitement to an already exciting day, so it'll be good.
Down at Thomson Station, Brooke Campbell, bride-to-be, has arrived. While Matthew waits nervously back at Walhalla Station, the wedding party is making the scenic trip from Thomson Station to Walhalla on board the 7A. A somewhat spectacular way to arrive. The amazing beauty that is Walhalla attracts hundreds of weddings yearly. However, only Brooke and Matthew have had the lucky opportunity to incorporate the 7A into their special day.
Thank you for choosing Walhalla to have your ceremony, and the Valley of the Gods welcomes you.
As vows are exchanged on the platform, one of Victoria Railway's most well-known and respected drivers, Jim Bray, and his wife Valda, are slowly approaching Walhalla. Jim has lived in Seymour for the last 50 years, and he has made the trip down to see the 7A return to the Walhalla line once again.
I've been on the railways, the Victorian Railways, for 38 years. I was a fireman at Traralgon. I transferred to Moe in 1952, and I was there until August 54. Then I went to Seymour and passed my driver's ticket, and I was a steam engine driver, locomotive driver, I fired on the last revenue train from Erica to Moe with 7NA. It was the 25th of the 6th, 1954. I'm the only one of the crew left.
He's very enthusiastic about railways, and he'd come down every year and give me a whole stack of magazines, you know. Oh, here's your latest lot of light railways, here's your latest lot, and he brings you badges and brings you all kind of bits and bobs would arrive every year, and it was really quite enjoyable. And, he, with his wife Valda and stuff, they'd come here and they'd go to the AGM, and he was a constant presence. And obviously he has that really strong link with being the fireman on the last train, etc. When I told him it was actually going to happen and the train was actually on its way, he was like a kid in a candy shop, you know. And I said, well, you're going to come down? Oh, yes, I'll come down. I said, well, I need you there for doing media and for doing TV interviews and stuff. And I was a bit worried about it because I wasn't sure how he was going to be. He was like a duck to water. You couldn't get him off the cameras in the end.
When I went into Walhalla on the day of when 7A was there, I said to Val, I said, just get out of the car and stand here for a minute and have a good look at this thing to see if it's fair dinkum, and steaming away there. And I walked down past the goods sheds, and Michael ran out and said, hop on the train quick, we've been waiting for you. So that's what I did, and the rest's history, really. Wonderful history, though. It's something I'll never forget. No, never.
I suppose where we really kind of like, you know, he will always be a friend as such, is that he was highly emotional about what happened. And I know that he tried not to shed a few tears, but he actually did for that when it actually occurred.
On that day in June 1954, 19-year-old Jim Ray wrote Goodbye Old Polly on the last train out of Erica. And it's with great sentiment that he hauls himself up onto the locomotive to welcome it back some 56 years later.
Yes, I'm going to write on the front of the engine, welcome back old Polly. When I left Maui in 1954 with the same locomotive, I wrote farewell old Polly. So it's a real honour today. Thank you. Wonderful, yeah. It was good to be able to write that on the front, really. I mean, 56 years down the track, and wonderful.
A few memories come flooding back?
My word, all the time with 7A, yeah, always.
And good for you to be here too, John?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right, yeah. But the other thing that's really great is, one of the things that's unique about these engines, any railway bloke will tell you, is the fact that they build bonds that years don't change. It's just very special.
Enginemen are different.
Oh, yeah, what?
With the sun setting slowly over the town of Walhalla, Michael knows that Saturday begins the first of the public runs. He meets it with nervous anticipation and excitement.
What's going to make it worthwhile, I think, is just seeing the reaction from people when it actually occurs. I've had phone calls from people who are coming down to watch the train actually going down the freeway. I mean, to me, why would you be interested in seeing a train going down a freeway on the back of a truck? But they want to document it the whole way and what it did. So it's a bit like, you know, this is 7A's a little holiday back to home, and it's something that hasn't happened in 66 years. And she's coming home, and if a lot of people are saying, you know, it's that real emotional part of it. People get very emotional about steam engines. Trains have a certain part in people's lives, perhaps not so much today, but with younger generation. But there's certainly a generation there that think that these engines and stuff are the bee's knees.
Nerves are aplenty as Saturday morning finally arrives. Whilst the crew members meticulously prepare the locomotive for its first passenger runs, John Hoy wants to ensure that the 7A looks just as beautiful as she did 100 years ago.
There's a long-standing tradition of putting ferns on the first engine in, on the narrow gauge anyway. Yeah, so that's why the ferns are there. This is just how it would have been in 1910.
The stress of organising the weekend is beginning to take its toll on the President. It's just minutes before the first run, and Michael's patience is being pushed to the limit.
They're all standing here, chat, just talk on the bloody train. You know? Everyone's reminiscing and getting together. We'll reminisce on the train. What seat number are you?
A1 and
A, other end, you're over there. End.
Yep.
Okay. Rob, just wait. The train's got, when the NA is connected. Well, the time had come for the first train to leave, and I went up and shook John's hand and said we'd be, this was now in his hands, and we were really, really stressed up until this point. We'd done our job. We've got the loco and the passengers and all the organisation to this point, and really now it was handing over to John as the driver to take this first train away, and this was going to be our opportunity to wave goodbye and to start the weekend rolling.
Wonderful, just fantastic. Waited for this all my life.
It's great to see what this railway can do, given that it's so remote and given that you've only got about 170 volunteers here with them. 1,000 in Puffing Billy, and not all of them there all the time, but they must be really pressed for labour, and it's just brilliant to see what they're able to do.
We walked the line in 1966, and when it was all blackberries and closed, and we never ever thought we'd see the real live NA Puffing Billy locomotives back here.
Yeah, well, when I first saw this railway, there were no trains on it, just little rusty steel tracks on rotten ties. So it's great to see it all happening. It's been a huge, huge effort to make it get to this state.
Your first trip with a few people on light engine trials and light carriages is one thing, but then to have people travelling behind the engine, you tend to worry about things like, have I got the braking right, am I going too fast, what sort of trip are the people having, how's the engine performing? And then when you suddenly look out as you're coming into Walhalla and see all these people on the platform, you start to think, what happens if I balls things up now? This will be really just all these people with their eyes on you.
The history, the locomotives.
Yeah, it goes way back from childhood, I suppose, and Pop used to take me in the Dandenong Ranges chasing Puffing Billy when I was really young, through the late 70s. So, it's just fantastic to see it back up here, which just sounded great. The blast of the funnel flanging off the rock faces was just incredible. It was really, really good stuff.
I fell in love with this railway, narrow gauge. When it closed in 1954, I didn't know why it was closed because I was too young. But anyway, I knew the last train was running, so I wagged school for the day. And I was going to go on the train at all cost. I wasn't worried about a ticket. Then, unfortunately, the train didn't run because it broke down. Typical kid, I got my backside tanned.
I mean, I've got no real association with the railway. I've got no real link with it, but to see people who have been there, have seen it, to see it come back in front of them, gave me a real buzz.
For those involved in bringing the 7A back to Walhalla, the arrival of Sheila Mangan brings a strong link to the train and the line's history.
Good on you. It's me. Sheila.
Lovely to see you.
Sheila Mangan's the widow of the driver in charge, who was my mate when we came up on the last train in 1954, 25th of June. Con Mangan, driver in charge, great bloke. Yeah, I mean, his wife, widow, comes up to the Walhalla, and it's lovely to see her there.
On June 24th, 1954, the revenue train was scheduled to depart the Moe railway yard and head along the Walhalla line to Erica for the last time. The iconic G42 was scheduled to perform the run, but the fireman in charge placed the coal on the fire before it was hot enough, and the G42 simply wouldn't steam up. The following day, the crew lit up the 7A, and on June 25, 1954, driver Con Mangan and fireman Jim Ray headed out on the Walhalla line aboard the 7A for the line's final run. At 11:30 a.m, to the sounds of cheering, the 7A pulled the 4-car train out of the Moe yard, across the street and toward Erica for the last time. As Jim and Con undertook their journey, a series of events would test both their skill and expertise. The sanders on the locomotive weren't working, and the greasy rails out of Gould were proving too much for the 7A. Jim Ray had to get out and sprinkle ash and gravel on the rails just to get traction.
When we came down that bank that night, I mean, we were in excess of 20 mile an hour. And the wheels should have been spragged by the guard, put a bit of wood in the spoke to help the train to stop, but he didn't want that. He said, no, she'll be right.
The train arrived at Erica, where a large crowd, including the children from the local school, waited to greet them.
And we took over the load out of Gould. We took 3 trucks over the load, because Mangan said, I'm not running another train to bring in loading. And yeah, I don't know what speed we were going over the crossing out of Moe. I wouldn't have a clue.
The crew soon realised they hadn't brought enough kerosene for the lights, and in what can only be described as a driver's worst nightmare, they ran out.
We never had a clue where the hell we were. I mean, you got to remember, you got a black thing coming out of the bush. Could hit a kangaroo, could hit anything, you know.
A large crowd waited nervously as they pulled the 7A into the Moe yard for the last time. The legend of the story would survive many decades and provide that inspiring link from past to present that would see the line restored eventually, with the service operational again from Thompson Station to Walhalla.
You get a lot of people asking you about it, and even up at Walhalla, you know. And the other at the centenary, they were saying, you know, what was it like? And oh, geez, wonderful. I was on this engine doing this test run. This is coming out of Avenel in about 1965. I was told to regulation whistling at the crossing, and I think I did that. I'm not sure, but this is my engine anyway, X29. That extra whistle out just after the sound, that was myself. I couldn't help but do that.
Jim's brilliance as a driver was unquestionable. Sadly, following a dreadful accident of the North Melbourne rail yards in 1986, this great driver's career could not continue. But around the Walhalla district, his fame and achievement is legendary.
Yeah, I was ready to run a train load of sugar home from Melbourne to Shepparton. And I took the engine out from the loco to go onto the train, and while I was at the signal at North Melbourne, I got hit from another engine coming off the turntable to run a train. The fireman was asleep on the other engine, and they never saw me on the curve. I was hit at 18 mile an hour. I never ever thought I would ever got cleaned up by another engine, because, yeah, I thought we were all pretty good. Yeah, so that was it. Yeah, but it's all right, I feel all right. Got Velda, that's the main thing. Yes. Yeah.
There's already word brewing that this will not be the last time it happens, so, you know, it may happen again sooner than people think, yeah. Because the reaction's been so good to what's happened, and the last day and the days before, everyone's having such a good time, and it's so positive for the town and so positive for the railway, and I suppose the railway community, that people want to, you know, let's do this again.
It's the final day of public passenger runs, and Michael's dream of clear skies to crown this wonderful weekend is washed away as the weather shows no respect for the revellers.
Well, here we are on the last day. This morning we've had quite a little bit of rain overnight, about 35 to 40 mils. There's a few trees down on the road. We've got the track crew down at the moment, actually clearing off some small rocks and stuff that have fallen onto the track, just because the engine's got quite low parts on it, so they're just getting rid of those at the moment. But the track's all good. The drivers are going to be quite vigilant today because of the weather's quite different. It's actually very windy down at Thompson River, so we're just going to be a bit conscious of that.
As the train returns from its first trip to Thompson Station, it's Russell, the Walhalla Goldfields railway volunteer, who receives the call that could bring the weekend to an abrupt halt.
We've had a landslide, so it's quite a big one. So they've gone down to see if they can clear it, and if they can clear it, we'll go. If not, I'll take it down to Happy Creek and I'll push the thing back up the hill. Somebody said this morning it was a passing shower, but it's going to take 3 days to pass, so it'll be fine.
A common occurrence in the high and rugged terrain of the Thompson to Walhalla section of the line threatens to ruin everything. Overnight heavy rains threaten to cause a serious landslide. It's almost inevitable. The volunteers of the WGR work frantically to remove the obstructing debris. But if the safety of the passengers on board is threatened at all, the weekend will come to a sudden halt.
Come down here, it was no small rockfall. It was right out over the rail, so I cleared some of it, thought, nah, too much for me, so I raced back up the hill to hopefully stop the train before it left the station. So.
A heap of rock, just had slipped down and was onto the rail, and then there was unstable rock up there where that tree is. One of the lads got up there and knocked it down and broke it up with sledgehammers and manhandled it over the side.
After frantic efforts by the WGR volunteers down on the line, volunteers at the Walhalla station receive the green light that will allow the final runs of the weekend to continue. After years of planning and coordination, the contribution of countless volunteers have been realised. Another important chapter in the history of the Walhalla Goldfields Railway has been written, not only setting a precedent for future events, but also re-establishing that important link between the past and the present.
It would probably rank, now this is going to sound a bit strange, but it would probably rank, as probably the best thing I've ever done train-wise, and it probably runs a fair distance second between the birth of my kids.
I never thought it'd happen, and neither did John. We do drive at other tourist and heritage railways around the place, but this was definitely one out of the box.
It's just extraordinary, just one of the most remarkable things I've ever done. There were a truckload of people like that just did absolutely everything to get it to happen. Absolutely everything. And it's just been, for us, it's just been an amazing journey. I mean, it's just, I can't tell you what it's like. I mean, unfortunately, I tend to get a bit emotional about some things. And you've got to understand the connection, and for you, some of you people here, you understand that connection. A lot of you will think, what a pack of silly old farts running around playing trains, but there are some serious connections. And when I look at blokes like Jim over there, that's a connection with the past. I've got to make sure that I carry it on for the future. And I've got to make sure we get this thing back here again, because that's critical. We've got to do it.
That's it. I think you'd say that was extremely successful, and even though a few little glitches on the way, and in the last minute when we had that rock slide just south of Happy Creek, or just on the Thompson side of Happy Creek, we got into that and fixed all that, only lost an hour, so everyone's smiling faces, everyone's happy. We've set the precedent. We've now kind of broken the mould and proved that it can be done, and what a huge success it was to have the locomotive here for the weekend. And just the people hanging off trees and cliff faces and the people on the trains. I mean, there's been smiles all round. There just hasn't been I haven't seen an unhappy face. The people who have just flooded in to really witness this event, and it's been a really special weekend, that's for sure. And people are sad to see the engine go home, but it needs to go home, that's fine. But I'm sure it's more than welcome to come back, and it will return, no doubt.
And I used to take railway books down. Every time I go, I take them down to him, put them in the lounge room, because it's a lovely lounge. You fellas know that. Sneaking through or not. At the wee hours of the morning. You can put that on your tape.
We start talking about experiences on locomotives and things that have happened over the time. I mean, you'll be here for another hour.
Listen. I'm 60 next week. I'm going to have a lot of trouble just climbing up. Right? I'm having problems with peeing in my pants and everything. The reality of life is we got. You thought I was wet from rain, didn't you?
I would say that I have a strong interest in railways, but I also have a commercial reality and realise that there's an enjoyment factor, but there's also sometimes some people do take it a little bit too far.
Just one last question.
One last question, Russ.
One last question. Are you a gun supporter?